Welcome to Crisis in Perception, where we examine the systems shaping our world.
So today we're diving into the framework presented in the book Anime and Philosophy. We're going to use it to understand anime not just as entertainment, but as a really powerful cultural system. Think of this as a compressed structural companion to our full deep dive on the topic.
And just to be clear, this isn't a summary or a review. We're not here to give you advice. Instead, we're going to follow a very specific analytical arc. We'll identify the system, look at the incentives that drive it, explore the outcomes it produces, understand why it persists, and then see how it connects to much larger systems.
That's the roadmap for our analysis. So, let's get into it.
Okay, first things first, we have to define the system. And to do that, we need to shift our perspective. We're not looking at anime as simple entertainment. We're treating it as a cultural processing system, basically a mechanism for a society to work through massive, profound changes.
So, what's the big change this system is built to process? It's this concept of the posthuman. This is the idea of a state where technology is so deeply woven into our lives that it actually changes the definition of what it means to be human.
And the source we're looking at argues that anime is just packed with these explorations of the posthuman. You could almost think of it as a cultural laboratory, a space to run simulations and ask, what could a technologically integrated identity actually look like?
So what fuels this system, right? What are the incentives that drive it to create these very specific kinds of stories over and over again?
Well, a huge part of the answer is rooted in Japan's post-war history. There was a cultural shift towards seeing technology not just as something to fear, but as a realm of incredible possibility, especially as the nation's focus moved from military to consumer tech. And this created a really powerful incentive. After the trauma of the atomic bomb, technology wasn't just a threat anymore. It could also be a shield, a form of armor, a way to enhance and protect the human body. It opened the door to stories of evolution, not just destruction. So, if we're going to use one metaphor here, this is it. Think of this system as a cultural simulation engine. It takes in these heavy inputs, things like historical trauma and rapid technological change, and it outputs these narrative models that explore all sorts of possible human futures. Okay, so if those are the inputs and incentives, what are the predictable outcomes of this system? What kind of models does this engine reliably produce?
The system consistently kicks out narratives that make technologically integrated identities seem, well, normal. You see ideas like the ghost in the machine, where a consciousness can live in a fully synthetic shell. Or you see bodies that literally morph, blending the organic with the technological. The key is that this change is often presented as an evolution, not just a collapse of what it means to be human.
Take a character like Modoko Kusanagi. Her identity isn't some singular core self. As she says, the consciousness she calls me is the sum of all her parts, her memories, her cybernetics, her data. The self becomes a distributed network. And this is so crucial. These stories don't just pose that question as a fun philosophical puzzle. They treat it as a lived, practical reality. They create models for how you might actually navigate the world when the definition of self is up for grabs. So that brings us to the next logical question. Why does this system endure? Why is it so persistent?
Well, pretty simply, it sticks around because the core incentives haven't gone anywhere. Technology continues to evolve at a dizzying pace, and we as a culture still need to adapt. As long as that's true, the cultural need to process and model these changes isn't going away either.
Now, how we view this system leads to a fundamental misunderstanding of its function. You could even call it a crisis in perception. And here it is. By simply dismissing these narratives as niche genre fiction, we completely miss the sophisticated cultural work they're doing. We fail to see their structural role in modeling our technological civilization, and we overlook the rich toolkit they provide for thinking about our own post-human future.
Okay, for our last step, let's pull the camera all the way back and connect this specific system to the much larger world we all inhabit.
So we started small, right here, analyzing the specific system of posthuman narratives in anime.
But that system doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's nested inside the much broader cultural process of how all of us form our identities in an increasingly digital world. And that process, in turn, is situated within the vast global economic and technological infrastructures that shape modern life for everybody, whether you engage with this specific medium or not.
So in the end, the function of a cultural system like this isn't to give us easy answers. Its purpose is to provide complex models for understanding complex change.
The goal isn't a solution, it's structural clarity, a clearer view of the forces at play. Crisis in Perception examines how systems shape belief, and how better tools help us see clearly. This project is free and publicly accessible. If you'd like to support the time, tools, and research behind Crisis in Perception, you can become a supporter on Patreon. For a longer, audio-based analysis of this topic, see the deep dive linked in the description. If you enjoy this kind of systems-level analysis, please like, subscribe, and comment with books or topics you'd like us to explore next.